That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Wrath of Man, the latest film directed by Guy Ritchie, which United Artists Releasing and MGM will be releasing theatrically May 7th, 2021.
Guy Ritchie is a notable director. I do know that. I know he used to be married to Madonna. Mm-hmm. They have a kid together. And you just reminded me he's done the Sherlock Holmes movies. He did Aladdin.
The Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr., Aladdin recently, The Gentleman. Lots of films that are kind of refurbished, nostalgic material, like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and a King Arthur reboot. But he started off with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels back in 1998, which I still consider to be his best film, which featured Jason Statham, who returned to work with him in Snatch, and again in 2005's Revolver, which, besides Wrath of Man, is his only other film set in the U.S. Interestingly, that has French roots as well, because Luc Besson scripted Revolver. And then, of course, the ill-fated Swept Away remake of the classic Lena Wertmüller film with Madonna.
Got it. Okay. So I'm feeling self-conscious because people comment that I move my hands too much. So now I'm fiddling with them. The basic story is Jason Statham plays a character who's referred to as H for most of the film. Mm-hmm. He is the boss of an organized crime outfit. Mm-hmm. Okay. Part of what they do, because it's not really explained like what he's the boss of, except like nefarious criminal things, but he is on like he's with his son one day and gets a call that we need you to go do some recon on something, and it's very urgent you do it now, because if you don't, it's going to set us back 3 months, so you have to do it. So he decides to go with his son in tow. Mm-hmm. Dougie, mm-hmm. I think is the boy's name?
Yes.
A teenager, or he's in college, I think. Anyway, while Dougie is in the car, H is like out doing recon, but also getting his son a burrito. And while he's doing that, part of what H's like outfit does is they rob armored trucks. Mm-hmm. So that was what he was reconning, I guess. Well, while he's out there, another outfit is about to rob a truck. And unfortunately, Dougie, who's sitting in H's Range Rover, is caught in the crossfire and is like killed. And he's killed by Scott Eastwood.
Who is part of a team that's run by Jeffrey Donovan.
Yes. So they're a much smaller outfit. It's just like 6 guys. They're all ex-military, and they're doing sort of like small little like hold-ups and things. Nothing that they can retire off of. And this is not a spoiler because it's in the like synopsis on IMDb that H is trying to avenge the death of his son.
Sure.
And we see who kills his son right away. It's Scott Eastwood's character. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Scott Eastwood kills Dougie. He also shoots H. Mm-hmm. So I think he presumes that he's dead because he's just lying there like he's dead. So that happens. H recovers. He's a boss. So he tells his little minions, like, you need to go find who did this, mm-hmm. who killed my son. So they're out here scouring all the other bad people and roughing everyone up trying to get answers. They can't find anything. They finally get a lead after a lot of violence occurs, mm-hmm. and they go rough up and kill more people when H's right-hand guy tells him...
Played by Alex Ferns. Tells him, like, we need to, like,
cool it. Because if we keep doing this, we're really going to affect our business. We think it's maybe someone on the inside. You know, we need to find a different approach. So H says, you know what, you're right. I'm going to cool it. I'm going to go back to London and chill. But really, what he did was assume a new identity so he could get a job with one of the armored truck companies. Fortico, with the idea that maybe the gang that killed his son might rob one of the trucks he's like doing security on. Because mm-hmm. he's basically like an armored truck driver now. So we see him go on a run. First he does the interview process. He gets hired. He goes on a run. It's successful. He interacts with his coworkers who are like a motley crew of like these random tough guy, ex-military, all these types of people. It's very clear that his mind is somewhere else and he's very cold. Then we see him on a run where it gets robbed and he kills everyone. So it's obvious that he is something special.
That is led by Post Malone.
Yes, yeah. And Post Malone gets killed. So of course everyone's like, you're a hero. It's all over the news. The man who owns the armored truck company is very impressed by H, saying like, we need to promote him and get him out there because it's great PR. He goes on another run and we see that run get robbed. But that time when the people robbing the truck see H's face, it's like they saw a ghost and they get scared and run away. Well, we find out that those people were the people who worked for him. So now they know that he's out here really on the inside trying to find out who killed his son. It culminates with Scott Eastwood and his little gang have decided that they need to do one like final big robbery, and they're planning to rob Fortico. Like not one of their trucks, but like their home base where all the money is.
At the depot.
At the depot, and they're gonna get like $160 million. So the middle third of the film is like kind of like Ocean's 11 type. Like they're trying to organize.
Well, we're also puzzling it together because it's told out of sequence.
It's told out of sequence. It's not really. There's no real suspense. There's not like we know who shot H's son, and we know that H is going to get him. The only real gag is like who's the person on the inside at Fortico who's going to assist with this major heist. And it happens to be a character named...
Big spoiler alert.
Not Butter.
Because he's second billing. Bullet.
Bullet.
Played by Holt McCallany.
Who I know from Mindhunter.
And I invite you to look up pictures of him from Creepshow 2 when he played an indigenous person.
I think I might actually know that.
Yeah, he's been around. He's been around a while in a lot of things.
So the heist occurs. They are successful in robbing this depot. But Scott Eastwood's character seems to go rogue. Like, he's very violent. He kills people unnecessarily. All of his men end up getting killed. And he kills one of them on his own. So now Scott Eastwood's character has all the money. And the final scene of the film is he is in his loft, luxuriating, when in the darkness of a corner we see H, Jason Statham's character. And it appears that maybe he had tracked him by putting a mobile device in one of the bags of money.
And I think right before that's revealed, is it Flight of the Valkyries?
I don't know.
Playing?
But Jason Statham's character throws an envelope at, what's his name? Eastwood? Steven? What's
Scott Eastwood.
Scott Eastwood's character.
He's playing a character named Jan, like Jan Michael Vincent.
Jan? Oh, interesting. H throws the envelope at Jan, and it's the autopsy report for H's son, and he makes him read it. And the part we hear is him reading like where all the bullet wounds entered, like his heart, his liver, his spleen, and something else, lungs. So then
nails, hair, hips, heels.
Todrick Hall. So H shoots Jan in those 4 organs. The end. Well, I did miss something. There's an FBI agent played by Andy Garcia who's kind of in cahoots with whatever syndicate H is the boss of, and basically allows H to do this, saying like, if you're gonna catch this guy and get us the money, then I'm gonna give you a long leash, but you need to do it quick and clean. So after H kills Jan, Andy Garcia kind of says, I'll take it from here at the end.
There you go.
Okay. That was rough.
So it's based on a 2004 French film by Nicolas Boukhrief called Cash Truck. And this screenplay was written by Ivan Atkinson and Marn Davies, who also wrote The Gentleman. And I cannot express how surprised I am at how much I really did like this movie, considering I have not liked a Guy Ritchie film in over a decade. Pairing that with Jason Statham, my expectations, I felt like I already knew what this was going to be like. And I was very surprised. And it reminded me, I thought several times, and we brought this up in discussion, of that Mel Gibson film Payback, which is notable about Payback, directed by Brian Helgeland, is that it's an adaptation of a Richard Stark novel, writing under it's a pseudonym for Donald Westlake, who had a famous character named Parker. And while Westlake Stark was alive, he wouldn't allow anyone to use Parker's name. So there are various adaptations of Stark novels, like Payback, without using his name. After Westlake died, the first person to play Parker under that name was Jason Statham.
Oh.
In 2013 with Parker opposite Jennifer Lopez.
He's in a movie with Jennifer Lopez?
Yeah, in 2013, Parker,
I didn't know
directed by
that.
Taylor Hackford. So I find that interesting because I was thinking of that during this, but very violent, very adult. As you were saying, I think, were you saying already that it's predictable?
Well, predictable in the sense that the synopsis of the film tells you basically everything you need to know. So it's just a basic revenge story.
A revenge heist film.
Yeah, and the heist component is satisfying enough. So I also enjoyed this film.
I did. I like the parts of Los Angeles that it was showing that aren't normally depicted. The heist element reminded me a bit of, I really liked Karen Kusama's 2018 film Destroyer with Nicole Kidman. And there is a bank robbery scene in Inglewood, I believe, that this also reminded me of these kind of industrial, out-of-the-way parts of Los Angeles. It's still very recognizable as a metropolis, but I don't know, I really liked it.
Okay, so going down my notes, the first 30 minutes of the film, because this is almost 2 hours, right? The film, the first 30 minutes had me worried because the dialogue and the acting of almost all of the characters we meet are very stylized.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, if it's going to be this for the entire movie, I can't do it.
But it wasn't stylized in that usual Guy Ritchie way, like The Gentleman, which I couldn't really stand.
No, but it was enough that I was a little annoyed, and a lot of I have a lot of quotes written down that are just like, oh, I can't believe they're saying these things. But then it switches.
It gets very intense.
It gets very intense and serious, and which I was very grateful for. But yeah, the opening was a little rough, especially, so even starting with his interview process. It just felt kind of like chaotic and ridiculous. We're introduced, Josh Hartnett plays one of the armed truck drivers.
And all of those people have very interesting nicknames. His is Boy Sweat Dave.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
didn't catch that. But when Josh Hartnett first meets his character meets H, he's like being like, they're kind of like hazing him a little bit.
It's a pissing contest. Yeah.
It is, and then Josh Hartnett's character says, "Do you have any idea how dangerous this job can be? We aren't the predators, we're the prey."
Yes, I wrote that part down.
Yeah, it was so corny, but then it's a very interesting choice to start the film off like that.
Sure.
And then ultimately make these characters seem very, I'm not going to say they were like real, because it does seem like, are all armored truck drivers at this level of...
It's highly stylized.
But it worked very well for me. Josh Hartnett looks good. I thought he looked like kind of like Matt Bomer.
Sure. Yeah, no, he's aged very gracefully.
He's looking good.
I thought Andy Garcia looked good. Alex Ferns was kind of giving me like...
Who's that?
Statham's right-hand man with that shock of white hair.
Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of giving me that way that Nick Offerman can be appealing sometimes.
Oh, yes. Again, the dialogue, it seems very, what's the word? Like, toxically masculine.
Yes, yeah.
Because there's a scene where they're referring to a middle-aged woman, and they say, like, there's still juice in that old raisin. Like, oh my God.
One of the bank tellers, yeah. Of course, there are not a lot of women. The one who has the most screen time is one of the drivers, Niamh Algar, playing Dana, who is also kind of doing that posturing thing. We meet her in the men's locker room, and they're like, "You're not supposed to be here," and she's like, "You're the ones that aren't supposed to be here." And just saw her recently in Censor at Sundance, which got a lot of praise. One of the midnight films, but she's likable. She also H sleeps with her and finds out that she's also kind of been doing some dirty things of her own at work.
Well, she stole some money, but not from Fortico. She stole it from like a customer who forgot that they had it.
Really expansive supporting cast. Eddie Marsan is in there, and I bring him up specifically too because I think we had guessed that he was the insider, because there's so many people that are notable. It's because casting familiar faces usually, like, why are you in this movie? I bet you have something to do with
Yeah,
it.
this story did do a good job of, I guessed incorrectly who the inside person was. So that was fun when we find out who it is.
And on the other team, Raúl Castillo and Laz Alonso, just a lot of very recognizable
Oh, and the scene where Bullet, that's his name? Bullet, the inside man, when he reveals who he is, he just says it. So they're in the armored truck together, he and H, and he tells him, like, I need to tell you something. I work with a group of people, and this is what we're about, and you just go sit here and shut up. I thought that was really well done. The first time we see Josh Hartnett's character involved in the robbery, he, like, freaks out. I thought that was funny. It's very violent. In particular, there was a scene, well, a lot of the, like, gunshots are, like, straight to the head, and you see blood splatter. There's one character where you see their, like, brains on the floor. And then there's one person who's kidnapped in an effort to extract information, the black man. And they, like, wrap his head in plastic, and they bust his face on the ground and beat him up. That was very violent.
It's very violent, as is kind of used to be Guy Ritchie's trademark.
Oh, when they rob, they don't give us the full, like the heist, the big heist at the end. It's not really explained how they're going to accomplish it. It's kind of told as it's happening, which I liked. But obviously, like, they're robbing this depot, which is heavily guarded, and of course, the alarm is triggered, and law enforcement show up right away, and they have a plan to get out. But then it's like, oh, how are they going to escape? Because there are helicopters following them, police. They drive into like an underground garage that has like the big cement, like the posts that pop up so you can't drive through it. So they know they have like a few minutes before the SWAT team comes and breaks in. But they discover that there's some underground tunnel that no one has referred to in blueprints since like the 50s. So what they're going to do is drive the armored truck into this garage, transfer the money to these like ATVs underground, and then escape that way. And they are successful. I thought that was actually a nice surprise to not know how they were planning on executing the heist until it was actually happening.
And granted, I haven't seen the 2004 film Cash Truck, but I think that it was well done, intricate storytelling, but at least in the sense of balancing all these elements, and the pacing.
My final thought was this film, like the story, I think works very well, and I enjoyed it. And if you like Jason Statham and you like him being like a badass, you'll really like this film. It's not as, I think, it's definitely not as over the top as like Crank or.
No, those are a different kind of
right,
genre.
but if you like him, you'll like it. I also thought this felt like John Wick in that the story is just so ridiculous. Like, this person is doing all this stuff to avenge the death of one person, even though he's involved in criminal activity.
Sure.
It's just a very interesting premise.
Well, I think it's trying to, the disparity between types of criminals that have a kind of a code of conduct amongst themselves versus those that are just sociopaths.
Sure, but that's kind of loose because they didn't, the people who killed his son didn't know who he was, so it's not like...
But the way that's depicted is that it was unnecessary. It was an unnecessary kill.
Right, and yes, and he, as like a criminal boss, he seems to have some integrity and some empathy. Like he's, like the black man who I mentioned, who they beat up with the plastic bag, he does divulge information, so then H says, oh, let him go, give him $200,000 in a car so he can leave. And then they raid the people who the guy spilled the beans on, and they seem to be, like, they have underage girls there, I guess, as, like, sex workers. And, like, he lets them all go and kills the bad guys. And so he seems to have some, I don't know how you would qualify it as integrity, but... I think that part was the part that I didn't connect with. But he's also a bad guy, so who cares if something bad happened to him? It's kind of how I felt.
But that's also what reminded me of the Westlake Stark. There's a rich tradition of characters like that.
Sure.
And then the armored car thing. It's not like that hasn't popped up before. And in fact, it reminded me of that Nimrod Antal film with Matt Dillon and Lawrence Fishburne from 2009. Okay. Armored.
What would you give this film?
3.5 out of 5. I was very surprised at how much I did enjoy it.
I would give it 3 out of 5, but I would definitely recommend it. Anything else?
No.
All right, bye.
Bye.